We turn now to the latest. With Sean Diddy Combs at an after party back in 2000. Both men have denied all wrongdoing. Jay-Z's attorney holding a closed-door meeting with select members of the media yesterday, insisting, quote, this never happened.
And joining us now is ABC News contributor and attorney Brian Buckmeyer for more on this story. Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So Jay-Z's attorney has outlined what he believes are inconsistencies in the accuser's account of what happened. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so the major pillars I would say would be location, witnesses, details, and timeline. Location being that this allegedly started off at Radio City, and according to the alleged accuser, she said that she was in the car for 20 minutes before getting to Sean Combs' house where the after party was hosted, to a large white house in a U-shaped driveway. Now, if you're from the New York area and you know where Radio City is, 20 minutes in any direction does not get you to that kind of real estate. And that's what the attorney is pointing out here. Witnesses. The accuser again says that she saw specific people at that after party, but people were saying, no, this person was touring. The witnesses, the alleged accuser's own father says, I don't remember picking her up after a 5-hour drive from Rochester to New York after this night. And then details. She's saying that she watched the show on the Jumbotron, where on the VMAs of that year, there was no Jumbotron, and the timeline as to how this all could have occurred, the attorney is saying it doesn't match up based on where people were at specific times.
I'm curious your thoughts, because Jay-Z's attorney met with select members of the media. It was a closed-door meeting. What do you make of this strategy?
Well, initially, where were we in this closed meeting? That's what my thoughts are, right? But I think it's smart because this is a situation where it's not only in the court of law, but also the court of public opinion. And I think Alex, the attorney, is really pushing back on the court of public opinion to try to help the court of law arguments, because when you look at the timeline, you look at the details, yeah, there are some inconsistencies.
And the accuser has acknowledged some
The courtroom buzzed with tension as the case involving Jay-Z and Sean Diddy Combs unfolded. The allegations were shocking. A woman claimed that in 2000, when she was just 13, she was assaulted. Jay-Z's lawyer, Alex Spiro, was ready to dismantle the claims, determined to expose the truth.
September 7th of 2000, it comes down to just the credibility of individuals. And people have issues with memory. It makes sense. I don't remember what I did on September 7th of 2000. But when some of these inconsistencies just go against the idea of just like geography, timeline, a fact that a father didn't even remember this, that's where I think there's some real issues for Tony Busby and the accuser's claims.
It's got to be a big blow for the case.
I would imagine so, but these aren't legal filings. This is just maybe a precursor to that. So we have to see what Alex Spiro ends up filing in court and what the response is from the Tony Busby and the accuser and what the court decides.
When you look at the language from Jay-Z's attorney, it seems they're really trying to distance themselves from Diddy at this point. How important is that relationship between these two men?
It's everything. I mean, when I first thought about this, I thought to myself, what are all the sayings that we have just in our culture about guilt by association, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are, birds of a feather flock together. At this point, Sean Combs is toxic from a legal standpoint in terms of his association with all of these civil lawsuits and a federal criminal investigation. So if you're a close friend of his, especially in the period of time when these allegations existed, you're definitely going to be looked at under a microscope. And so what Alex Spiro is doing is saying, hey, yeah, they're close friends, we admit that, it's public knowledge, but that friendship stops when we get to this whole freak-off issue.
Spiro addressed reporters confidently before heading into court. He pointed out glaring inconsistencies in the accuser's story, calling it provably false. The lawsuit described an event at a large white mansion with a U-shaped driveway after the MTV Music Awards. However, Spiro presented photos and timelines showing Jay-Z and Diddy were at a nightclub that night. There was no mansion, no driveway, no party. It didn't add up.
That found inconsistencies with the accuser's account.
We expect Mr. Carter to be fully cleared of all of this in the coming days. Almost nothing that she says has checked out because this never happened.
This in the wake of our interview with a 38-year-old mother from Alabama.
Want to come forward because I think that I've been quiet long enough.
She says that she might have some facts wrong, but that she says the incident happened. What do you say to that?
You know, anybody, when they make up a claim, they can just keep repeating it and getting it right. But you never get the details right. And what happened during her interview with you is that the story began to unravel.
On the night of the MTV Video Music Awards in 2000, she says Combs' limo driver took her to an after party. There, she says she spoke to musician Benji Madden and his brother.
I'm talking to Benji Madden about his tattoo. That's the Last Supper.
In a statement to NBC News, a representative for the Maddens confirmed they didn't. Father who picked her up.
We rode home in silence. He didn't ask me what happened.
In an interview with NBC News, her father said he could not corroborate her story. I feel like I would remember that, and I don't, he said. The woman revealed to us that she has autism and previously suffered a head injury. In a follow-up phone interview, we asked her about the contradictions, and she said that she stands by her statements.
This woman is standing by her story. It happened over 20 years ago. Maybe her memory is hazy. Maybe her father doesn't remember that night.
No, she's doubled down on certain of these details. She says, I'm positive. She points out the tattoo. She talks about the tattoo in vivid detail. Turns out that's completely false. And the father is supposed to be picking her up. 10-hour drive, round trip to pick her up in the middle of the night. Has no memory of that. No one has come forward about this in nearly a quarter of a century, and that's because this never happened.
Spyro said he's not only seeking justice for Jay-Z, he says that he also wants to expose the accuser's attorney, Tony Busby.
He takes away the voices from real victims, and he causes real harm. If this lawyer has any sense, he's going to dismiss this claim. I don't know what...
The woman had claimed she sneaked out of her home in Rochester and traveled 5 hours to New York City to watch the awards on a Jumbotron outside. But Spyro revealed another major problem. No permits or records showed the existence of any Jumbotron at the event in 2000. How could she have watched something that wasn't there?
Whether he has any sense.
Busby, who has filed more than 20 lawsuits against Combs, told NBC News that he is continuing to vet the accuser's claims and that she has agreed to undergo a polygraph this week. A representative for Combs called the suit a shameless money grab.
Since your attorneys refiled the lawsuit against Combs naming Jay-Z, he has come out with a very long statement saying that this is completely not true and that this is all about trying to get money from him. What do you say about that?
I haven't asked for a dime from him. It's not everything is motivated by money, and I'm sorry that he feels that it is.
This woman also told us on camera last week that this isn't about money.
Well, let's be serious. A lawyer like this is not sending out these letters not to make money. He wants money and fame. He doesn't care about truth and justice. And that's what's going on here.
Chloe Malas joins us in studio. So, Chloe, explain this to me. The attorney for the plaintiffs, Tony Busby, right? He is sticking by his client even though you've been able to report these inconsistencies and they are now out there in the public?
Yes, and because of our exclusive report here on Top Story, he's actually going to have Jane Doe do a polygraph test. He says he hasn't done it yet, but that they are going to be doing it this week. He also said in a statement to us moments ago that their conduct throughout all of this has been beyond reproach and will continue to be, even though that's not what you're hearing Alex Spyro, Jay-Z's attorney, what he's saying. Also, I just want to show you, Jay-Z's team created a timeline. Obviously, they are, even though this took place allegedly 24 years ago, right? They are saying that there is just no way that he could have been at the VMAs. He's on camera there until the end of the VMAs, which ended right after 11, and that there are photographs of him at the Lotus Club in Manhattan, and they say he was there till 3 a.m., and then he went to the music studio. So, again, they are adamant that
he was not at that party.
That he was not at any sort of after party.
I do want to ask you this. What is Jay-Z's sort of legal team strategy in describing the relationship between Diddy and Jay-Z? Because there are a ton of photos of them over the years, obviously before these allegations came out.
And this civil suit, Tom, originally just named Combs, and then it was amended last weekend to include Jay-Z. What Alex Spyro said to me today is that although publicly Jay-Z supported Diddy, they were not best friends. They were not as close as you thought that they were. So in terms of knowledge of what went on allegedly at these white parties and what took place allegedly in these civil suits and the criminal charge and the trial, he says Jay-Z has no knowledge of any of that. Again, he publicly supported him as a fellow musician and someone where they came up together in the industry, right, but that they weren't as close as you thought.
The timeline of events also didn't align. To reach New York City by the claimed time, the accuser would have had to leave her house at 3 p.m., an impossibility given her story of sneaking out unnoticed. Additionally, her father, who allegedly picked her up from a gas station in New York, had no memory of making such a trip. These details further weaken the narrative.
Civil lawsuit filed against Combs in October was amended Sunday to include Jay-Z. The Video Music Awards after party in 2000. In a blistering statement, Jay-Z accuses Jane Doe's attorney of trying to blackmail him. He said further, quote, "These allegations are so heinous in nature that I implore you to file a criminal complaint, not a civil one. Whomever would commit such a crime against a minor should be locked away. Would you not agree?" He added, "My only heartbreak is for my family. My wife and I will have to sit our children down, one of whom is at the age where her friends will see the press and ask questions about the nature of these claims and explain the cruelty and greed of people." Joining us now, Joey Jackson, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. There's a lot to unpack here. Joey, I want to start with just the statement from Jay-Z, which is so forceful in its denial. I just read a teeny part of it. It's long, where he says that they should file a criminal complaint. Is that even possible at this point?
So based on the allegations, Jessica, good morning, good to see you. I think that it certainly could be. Why do I say that? Now, he, of course, is more than annoyed, would be an understatement. Yeah. He has a family and he has a lot to protect, including his brand. But to the extent that he's saying, hey, come after me criminally, that could be likely. Why do I say that? What that means in English is that it's saying that he held her down, raped her, and that, of course, the allegation is that Mr. Combs did the same thing. And so if those facts are actually accurate, it would require an investigation by prosecutors. And if true, right, you could pursue it criminally. Now, with respect to evidentiary value, yes, it happened 24 years ago, right, more than 24 years ago. But in the allegations, there's a few things. Number one, there's allegation that another celebrity was present at the time, right, in addition to other people. Number two, there's the claim by the victim, right, that she left, that she went and she was seen by a gas attendant who saw her in distress. Number three, that she phone called her dad, who showed up, the 13-year-old, and now removed her. So civil complaint, simply allegations, needs to be proven in a court of law, but if true, it could rise to the level of criminality, and, you know, we'll see what happens or if the DA looks and investigates.
So what happens now?
So what happens now is this is simply a civil complaint, and in a civil complaint, it goes through the technical.
Spiro argued that the woman's story wasn't just unlikely, it was entirely fabricated. He accused opposing lawyer Tony Busby of manipulating the accuser and exploiting the legal system for attention.
The distinction, Jessica, between civil and criminal, of course, is that civil is for monetary damages, right? The system can only reward you with money. There's allegations that this 13-year-old is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered depression, etc. So now you go to fact-finding, right? Before that, just briefly, there was a demand letter sent. And a demand letter is a letter being sent by a lawyer saying, hey, I don't have to sue you. We can sit, we can mediate it. If we reach an agreement, it never sees the light of day. Jay-Z saying, I don't care about your demand letter. I look at it as blackmail. You want to sue me, sue me. You want to look at it criminally, look at it criminally. But it'll go through the fact-finding process. If a trial is necessary to determine the facts, that's what will happen. But it'll be deemed civil. No indication at this point as to whether or not any criminal investigation will ensue as a result of this.
Yeah, and Jay-Z came back incredibly forcefully against these allegations and really singled out that attorney as well for being, I'm paraphrasing here, but greedy, saying he's out to get money, and calling that letter essentially blackmail.
Yeah, and in addition to that, Jessica, also suing the attorney, saying he's intimidating. is they send them out as a matter of protocol and practice so that you can expedite the process. At the same time, there's certain ethical standards that you have to use, and you have to have a good faith factual belief that this is true. Now, you can argue this complaint was filed in October, right? Could have mentioned Jay-Z then. You didn't. Why? It was amended now to include him. Are the factual assertions true? Are they fact or fiction? Is it a money grab or not? All of that will be litigated in a court of law, but according to Jay-Z, this never happened, is pure fiction. It is a money grab, and he's fighting for his name, reputation, and certainly innocence and justice in his view, which is he didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, and you touch on a point, too, that I wanted to ask you about, which was that this was an amendment to this already existing lawsuit. What are people to take away from that, the fact that they're coming back and adding to this now with this specific name?
Yeah, you know, Jessica, so it depends. That's also common. You could amend lawsuits, right, as a matter of course, and you do, to include certain factual allegations. The interesting thing to me in terms of your question and the takeaway, if you had this information about Jay-Z, it happened allegedly in September of 2000, why not include it in the original complaint? What happened between October and now that necessitated you putting in, and it's a question of credibility. Was he celebrity A, right, as was noted in the October complaint? Is this pure fiction? And what's interesting in the complaint is he really, that is the lawyer, tries to tie Jay-Z to Mr. Combs in so many ways, right? Birds of a feather is the argument that he's making. You can make that argument. You need the facts to sustain it. Let's see if they come up with any facts.
Busby, a well-known lawyer, had already made headlines for representing over 120 individuals with allegations against Diddy. His firm even set up a toll-free hotline for potential accusers, a move Spiro criticized as opportunistic. Spiro claimed Busby was undermining real victims by taking advantage of a vulnerable woman and sensationalizing the case.
I think he is going to bat for his name. I think he wants to be very clear that he says that this is not true. This is not him. He's fighting it civilly, and he's also taking action against the woman's lawyer, Tony Busby.
Sean, what did you make of those statements?
I love when somebody comes to a full-throated defense of themselves. I'm always very cautious as the criminal defense attorney. I'm like, be careful on saying things that are that specific, because he's all in.
Busby, in a statement to me yesterday, kind of said that same thing. He said, you know, Jay-Z's creating a silly sideshow, and we're committed to, you know, defending a courageous woman who's brought these allegations.
Jay-Z, he made his position, his opinion on Busby very clear. You call him an ambulance chaser in a cheap suit. And then his lawyers filed a motion that goes on to say attorney Tony Busby has orchestrated a month-long press campaign aimed at inflaming public opinion and escalating the events in real time on social media platforms. Mr. Busby continues to amplify false narratives, exploiting the legal process to generate media attention and damage Mr. Carter's reputation.
When you file a lawsuit in America, as an attorney, you must have a good faith belief on why you're filing the lawsuit. You must. Busby better hope he has a good faith belief on why he's filing this lawsuit, or a federal judge will destroy him over just dragging it. This is a bell that cannot be unrung. Now that the name is mentioned, it's never going to go away.
And Busby has also taken to Instagram. He's big on Instagram. He posts a lot, long statements, and he's and will litigate the facts in court, not in the media. Well, that sounds to me like an assertion that he has a good faith belief in what's happened.
Absolutely. I mean, that's his belief. He has a good faith belief. Jay-Z said it himself. He's not and he's not. I mean, this is a guy who grew up differently than everybody else. He's not going to, everybody, what's the phrase? Don't let the suit fool you. He grew up in the streets, and he's just like, you're going to make these allegations against me, a bunch of kids, I'm going to fight back. So this might be, you know, we talk about Diddy doesn't listen to his lawyers. This case
was part of a larger wave of lawsuits tied to the Adult Survivors Act, a New York law that allowed a one-year window to file civil suits regardless of how long ago the alleged incidents occurred. The law had led to numerous high-profile cases against Diddy, who pleaded not guilty and awaited trial in May. New claims against him were emerging almost weekly.
Self-made, was not used to people bullying him, extorting him. I mean, this is a drug dealer from the streets. Let's not forget where he started. This is not something that he's like, I'm not going to play your suit and tie games. He's street.
But that is a fact. We know he was a drug dealer. He was on the streets. His art was a reflection of the life that he lived, and that has allowed him to climb, his early art has allowed him to climb to the levels that he has. And he's also a very skilled rapper. But that is who he is, and he's made that very clear in his statements. That is who he's going to continue to be while he fights this out. Sean, Cheyenne, thank you so much, and I know I'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated. Bye, Cheyenne.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
In other civil lawsuit news, it looks like there could be 150 civil suits on the way via Tony Busby, the Texan lawyer who's representing other alleged victims of P. Diddy. Before the Jay-Z news broke, I caught up with the BBC's music correspondent Mark Savage, who's been chatting to Tony.
So the interesting thing is that Tony didn't actually start out pursuing this case. It was handed to him by a friend, another lawyer from California called Andrew Van Arsdale. And as he was investigating those claims, he started getting calls from people who said they had stories to tell about Sean Diddy Combs. He asked Tony if he could help because he just didn't have the resources to deal with it, and Tony said yes. He put out an Instagram statement asking victims to come forward, and he said to me in the 10 days after that Instagram statement, his team received about 3,000 calls. He had a team of lawyers and former law enforcement officials screening out the ones that they thought might be potentially actionable in court. He's talking about 160 cases. I think we've only seen about 24 filed so far, so there's a lot more still to come. It sounds like he has a lot of cases waiting in the wings.
Tony knows how to put on a show for the media. What do we know about him as a character?
I mean, he is very media friendly and he does put his case out there in the public. He was very careful with me. He wouldn't share any of the legal arguments that he might make in court. He didn't want to prejudice the trial. But he is very good at stepping into the limelight, asking more victims to come forward, and kind of making a case in public to set out his stall ahead of any eventual trial. He has been very successful, and he is very well known around Texas. He, in fact, stood to be a politician at one point, but I think has returned to his law firm.
And I read about, have you heard about the tank? The World War II tank?
I have not heard about the tank. Tell me this.
Oh, so he bid on a real World War II tank at auction and he got it, and then he parked it outside of his house and the whole neighborhood was up in arms, and they sort of got together and tried to petition him to move this giant World War II tank, and he wouldn't move it. So I'd heard about that before, and then I was like, oh, this is the same guy that did the press release in October. But when he did that press release, he spoke about 120 cases that
the accuser initially filed her lawsuit against Diddy, but later amended it to include Jay-Z, alleging he participated and that another celebrity watched. Spiro dismissed these claims as baseless, calling them a desperate attempt to pressure his client into settling. He referenced a previous incident where Jay-Z had sued Busby for attempting to blackmail him.
All right, Sharonda, if this allegation is true for a 13-year-old, what type of trauma are we talking about?
We're talking about extensive trauma. We're talking about frontal lobe issues, temporal lobe issues, where we're talking about memory. We're talking about an increase in anger, an increase in frustration. We're talking about sensory fragments where you remember sense of smell. You remember everything, every little detail, because you're stuck there and you can't progress and you can't move forward. I think there are also other things we have to consider in studying this case. The alleged victim reported that she, struggles with autism and she had a brain injury. And so when you add those factors in there and she has a history of epilepsy, those things also affect memory. And I think that that's the part that's going to make this.
Chloe Mellis at NBC News spoke to the unnamed accuser and her father in this investigative report.
We rode home in silence. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask me what I did or where I was.
In an interview with NBC News, her father said he could not verify the claims. Quote, I felt like I would remember that, and I don't. I have a lot going on, but I mean, that's something that would definitely stick in my mind, he said. When we asked the woman about the contradictions in a phone interview on Friday, she said that she stands by her statements. I have made some mistakes, she said. Honestly, what is the clearest is what happened to me.
Okay, Sharonda, what are your thoughts about the latest statements from the accuser and from her father, who was, according to her, the one who came to pick her up?
I think it's difficult to tell someone who says they've been raped in the way that she explains it, that they haven't been. So I can't necessarily question her truth. I think it's important to note that those around her who she named that was also involved in or supported her during this tough time, they don't remember the situation. And so I think that those raise flags. But I also think that there is a lot of struggle with memory. And if we're talking about drug use, and like I said, we're talking about temporal lobe issues, then we are talking about questionable memory. How much do you remember? How much can you say was fact versus how much is maybe vicarious trauma? And what vicarious trauma is when you've heard the narrative.
Busby denied the blackmail accusation, claiming his actions were a routine effort to arrange mediation. Spiro, however, argued that the timing of the allegations, just before the expiration of the Adult Survivors Act, was suspicious. He accused Busby of orchestrating a calculated attack that not only damaged Jay-Z's reputation, but also jeopardized the integrity of the legal system.
Times that you begin to believe that it's your narrative, and you will take on these feelings, beliefs, and ideas as if they're yours. And I think with all the other things she has going on, those are things that will come into question if she was someone that I was seeing. Not necessarily questioning her truth about being raped, but I would definitely explore all those possibilities.
And how about the passage of time here? We're talking about 24 years later, right? This goes back to 2000. It's 2024. Going back 24 years to remember something that happened to you when you were 13. How accurate would you expect those memories to be?
I think when it comes to trauma victims, 20 years ago feels like yesterday. So I do think that there is some details that they will remember. They will remember scents. They will remember sounds, voices. They will remember all that as if it just happened yesterday. So I don't think that the time frame of it all, plays a huge factor. Now, I do know that there are some clients who will block things out, but the minute you start unraveling, it will come to them with such clarity. So I don't think that 20 years ago makes any difference to a trauma victim, because to them, it feels like yesterday or like they're still in the moment. And that's what hypervigilance is.
And is there any way from your perspective when you're talking to someone to work through to figure out what is an actual memory versus what is perhaps, your mind playing tricks on you or some impact from the trauma itself? Is there any way to peel back any of those layers, or is it just is what it is?
No, I have many tools that I use to peel back those layers. I definitely create trauma narratives, or I allow the client to create the trauma narrative. I do dissect what they've been watching, who they've been speaking to, what they've been listening to, because sometimes those things can come up in the narrative or in the story. And so I have to help them pull apart what is real versus what they feel. And those things prove to be pretty successful with most of the clients that I've worked with who have been victims of sexual and physical trauma. And I think a lot of times they're able to say, you know what, I did see that somewhere else, or I heard that, or I've owned that, and it doesn't belong to me. But that also comes with doing really good extensive trauma work. So I think someone definitely should sit down with her and piece apart what is it that is real versus what you feel, because making mistakes in a situation like this is pretty critical and pretty crucial. So it's important to be very clear.
Sharonda Brown, always great insight. We appreciate your valuable time. Thank you so much. All right.
You're welcome.
My think tank's still with us. Al Wunsch, Darnell Crossland, and Jennifer Brandt. So Jay-Z responded very quickly now.
In a statement, Jay-Z expressed his support for genuine victims while condemning false claims for harming everyone involved. He stood firm in his innocence, calling the allegations a coordinated attack on his character.
You should always advocate for yourself and be a voice for yourself. You should never let what somebody else did ruin or run your life.
A 38-year-old mother from Alabama who has filed
and talk today?
Because I think that I've been quiet long enough about what I've been through, and it's been hard enough to be quiet. But it's a chapter of my life that I'd like to close.
An NBC News review of her account found inconsistencies with her allegations. She says that she went to the MTV Video Music Awards in 2000 to catch a glimpse of her favorite celebrities.
You weren't scared to be all alone?
No, with having autism is like feeling like you live your life in a shatterproof juggle ball. The world's on fire. The fire is inside the ball with you, but there's no way for you to get out.
In addition to having autism, the woman says she suffered a head injury. The night of the 2000s VMAs, she says a friend drove her from Rochester, New York to Manhattan, a more than 5-hour drive. Her attorney provided NBC News with the name of the friend who has since died. The woman says she spoke to Combs's limo driver who offered her a ride to an after party.
I stumbled upon Diddy's driver who told me that I was exactly what Diddy was looking for.
What did you think when he said that to you?
I thought it meant that I was just pretty.
She went to a White House, she says, where she spoke to musicians Benji Madden and his brother.
I'm talking to Benji Madden about his tattoo because, you know, I have about his tattoo that's the Last Supper because I have a religious background. So it was just something to talk about.
In a statement to NBC News, a representative of the Maddens confirmed that they did not attend the 2000 VMAs and that they were on tour in the Midwest at the time. At the after party, she says she had a drink that made her...
Back in court, tensions reached a peak. Spiro presented photos, timelines, and witness statements that dismantled the accuser's story. He called the allegations an insult to the intelligence of the court and the public. By the time he finished, the courtroom was silent, his words leaving a heavy impact.
What I did or where I was.
In an interview with NBC News, her father said he could not verify the claims. Quote, "I felt like I would remember that, and I don't. I have a lot going on, but I mean, that's something that would definitely stick in my mind," he said. When we asked the woman about the contradictions in a phone interview on Friday, she said that she stands by her statements. "I have made some mistakes," she said. "Honestly, what is the clearest is what happened to me." The inconsistencies in her account of an incident alleged to have happened 24 years ago does not necessarily mean the allegations are false. The accuser's attorney, Tony Busby, said, "Because we have interrogated her intensely, she has even agreed to submit to a polygraph. This has been extremely distressing for her, to the point she has experienced seizures and had to seek medical treatment due to the stress." In a statement to NBC News, Sean Carter said, "This incident didn't happen, and yet he filed it in court and doubled down in the press. True justice is coming. We fight from victory, not for victory."
Is any part of you scared coming out against such powerful people?
Yeah, I'm scared of what could happen, but I'm more afraid of letting it eat me alive from the inside out than I am of, you know, being chastised by their fans.
All right, Chloe Malas joining us now live. Chloe, we just heard a very strongly worded statement from Jay-Z. What else are you hearing from him and his team?
Yes, so his attorney said that they're going to ask the court to, quote, dismiss this frivolous case. And also moments ago, we heard from Diddy's legal team, and I want to read you some of what they said. They said, quote, this is the beginning of the end of this shameful money grab. And remember, he remains behind bars at Brooklyn's Metropolitan